Have you wondered recently whether your practice is taking you to the desired level? Have you ever discussed with somebody about your level of practice and what you're doing on a daily basis? Today, I am joined by DEBRA, meditation teacher trainer, and you've seen her in my older videos. Hi, DEBRA.
Hi.
And we're going to talk about the level of practice, what practices we're doing. And we would love to hear your feedback, your take on it. For now, this is our take, how we see it from the coaching side. Come to the coaching side. So, DEBRA, we prepared a few topics. I'm going to read them and then we'll dive into each one of them. The first one, is your practice focused or scattered? Second one, New Age or traditional practices? Third, what does it mean to practice correctly? We did have a talk about this one. Number 4, intuitive practices or making a practice work for you. What does that mean? And 5, from the coaching side, where we are at with what we're practicing nowadays with our coaches, with the people that we're training, and so on. Let's begin with how we started when we decided to film this video. Is your practice, you who's watching, focused or scattered? We were talking yesterday about having all kinds of practices, and we made this point, the distinction between focused practice and scattered practice.
Yes. And what does scattered mean?
Well, we had some notes here. Some people are doing meditation, then tantric practices, yoga, qigong, fitness. And essentially, we were talking about these being different energy practices, different types of energetic practices. And because people are trying to jam these in one day, most of them at a time, they're quote unquote, for lack of a better word, weak, because you do one practice one way, then the other one is tantra, qigong, meditation, primal screaming. You were mentioning something about this yesterday also. Crystals, tarot, God knows what else people are doing nowadays. And when you have them all in one day, it's like, well, what the heck are you doing? Like, where does your energy go? Because these systems are different. And you know, when you're just starting out, it might seem fun, it might be cool. I want to try that. I want to try that kind of meditation. And I want to go for crystals. I have an altar in my home, and whatever else people are thinking of. And their level of consciousness is not growing, or they're not more profound in their understanding. And also sometimes what we see is that they're not grounded and they're not centered because they're scattered. That's what we were talking about. What does it mean to be scattered?
Yeah. And I've seen people, certain coaches teach all different variety of practices and not have like, a set routine and then add on, but just have a million different practices. But I know myself, I have to have like a routine. Otherwise I get scattered doing many different things and maybe bypassing the most important practices we have. Like always beginning with like a grounding practice to ground and then get more into, my body. Like that's how I have to start.
Okay. I think it's also important to look at this because the more we are online and the more people, they have their attention span shrinking. We're scattered just by scrolling on social media. And if we're scrolling on Instagram and maybe on YouTube, maybe on TikTok, I don't want to talk about TikTok. It's like a few seconds of crazy thing, and then the next crazy thing, the next stupid thing. I have a really big, what is it? I have a bone to pick with TikTok, like huge bone to pick. It's like people are just not capable to hold their attention for longer than a minute or so. So I feel that with everything that is going on, commercials, ads, sponsored posts and all of that, it's our attention is already scattered. And that's the whole point. The algorithm tries to keep you there and it's like somebody called our cell phones are the modern day slot machines. It's like you pull the trigger, pull the lever,
Oh yeah.
new, and it's like addictive, and you're not doing it. It's not even helping you grow in any way. So if you're going about it in the same way with your practices, then yeah, it's important to bring awareness. Are you scattered or are you actually focused in your practice? For me, I don't do too many practices. I try to stick to one or two mostly, because otherwise my energy is going all over the place. And I also wear myself out. If our attention is called into many directions, and if you have to focus to do according to one system, let's say Qigong, and then another one, let's say breath work, and then another one, let's say Jade practice, it consumes a lot of energy just to attune yourself to all of these modalities and actually stay focused. And you want to preserve energy in order to focus, to keep your attention and also work. So from my perspective, a focus practice is extremely important. And I try to actually become aware, how much energy do I have today? Because I got to work, I got to wolf to walk, I got to do some shopping, grocery shopping, I have to cook, I try to eat more, grounded, and maybe also have a social life. So if I'm scattered all over the place with my social media and practices and everything else that's in my life, by the end of the day, I'm drained. And if I start to, because at the end of the day, I don't know how you do this, but sometimes I try to rewind and see, what did I achieve today? Let me tell you, whenever I can have, like, when I have two big goals for that day, it's like, yes, I did it. But I realized like when the pandemic started and we had to stay inside and we were online all the time, I realized in the beginning I was not doing anything. It was just all over social media. That's where my attention went. So that's how I started to really pay attention to this topic. Scattered or focused? My vote is on focused.
Yeah, all that's a lot going on.
Yeah. Also, what we wrote here is for people, let's say that you're one of those people that have to work with your cell phone and online. And one tool that you can bring for yourself is a coach that actually guides you and is super powerful in their practice, whatever their practice is. And you stay consistent with that person long enough to see results. Because you don't just, like, you plant a seed in the soil and you expect it in the same day to sprout, grow, and even have a flower. It doesn't happen that way. And if you put it in one soil and then you take it out, put it in another, and change 5 soils in the same day, what the heck you're gonna do with that seed?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Lord have mercy on that seed. Basically, that's a metaphor there.
So just staying with the coach long enough to develop a habit, have a routine, and have some guidance
and see
of what to actually do.
Yeah, have somebody guide you. That's one way of looking at bringing yourself from a scattered to a focused place.
That's how I started with yoga ages ago, and I had a certain yoga school and we had a set routine. If I started today with yoga and I just did like YouTube, a little bit here and there, it would be very scattered. But because I started, under a specific plan that, like, okay, you meditate, then you do this breath work, and then you do this yoga, and then you do this every day. It became a habit. And I had structure and I wasn't all scattered. And that's just for, yoga and meditation. So trying to learn like other types of practices, I definitely see, especially since we have hundreds of options these days, and like YouTube's always recommending even more practices, or Instagram, everyone's posting lots of different types of practices to do. Yeah, how do we kind of tune all that out and get focused if we don't have a guide, or at least an online coach, their online course, and then follow the instructions.
I'm curious how long you stayed with this yoga school that you started.
Years and years, until I went to India, and then I decided to go to this other branch that was kind of the opposite. And then I got a little kind of a blend of both, leaning more towards the other.
Okay, years.
Because I saw results,
Okay, yeah, in years, definitely. So not a month, not 2 months, years. Super important to point that out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the next topic we were talking about when we agreed to do this video, it was, do we go for new age practices or traditional practices? And here were some ideas around this issue. How much of the practices nowadays stick to tradition, and does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
And we were also wondering if tradition was a form of patriarchal brainwashing or just a form that is stuck in old and obsolete ways. And we weren't alive back then. We don't know how everything was because they were adapted to those times. And maybe they might not be a match for our modern day present world with our modern day present challenges. And holding on to a traditional practice, do we hold on to it because of the morality? But is it adapted to our times and our ways of seeing, understanding, and interacting with the world? So this was one main issue that we had about traditional practices, when they were set up, and are they relevant nowadays? Do they actually help? Are they attractive for younger people nowadays?
The traditional or the new age?
Traditional, first of all. We were looking at the traditional.
Yeah, this is all something I think a lot about, and I brought up before with teaching my students, because they're looking for very authentic stuff that's been around thousands of years. And I taught that for a long time with meditation, Tantra meditation, but it doesn't always apply to the modern world. And just because it was correct to do for people thousands of years ago, 2,000 years ago, doesn't mean it's right for today with cell phones and cars and, more free society, working 60 hours a week. Cell phones and social media and people having thousands of friends spread around the world, rather than just having a few people that they interact and share energy with every day. So I think that we have to have a blend, or just make the practices that I do more for the modern world.
Mm-hmm. What I find with traditional practices, people don't have patience, first of all, anymore. I was discussing with another person in a previous interview. She's Romanian. She's living in the UK. She's a trauma coach. And I was telling her, she and I have about the same amount of followers on our social media. And we're more, just like you are, also more calm, more grounded. We're more in the parasympathetic nervous system. And I'm watching channels of YouTubers or Instagrammers, TikTokers that have hundreds of thousands of followers, and people who actually take them as models. Their videos are more hyper, and some of them are even triggered, like they're triggering. The images, they change really fast, frames. There's a lot going on in most of them. And the people themselves, they talk like they're plugged into 220 volts. For me, that's somebody who's hyper activated in the sympathetic nervous system all over the place, and a lot of, like, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that are following that. And modern day world is so fast the people don't have the, not attention span, they just don't have the bandwidth to process slower things, you know, to actually sit down and reach those states of nirvana that allegedly traditional meditation practices. What was the silence? What was it called? Where you go for, I don't know, 9 days, 2 weeks,
Vipassana.
Vipassana, yes. I've never gone for that, although I'm much slower, but it seems like it's really hard for the body, for me, from my perspective. But a lot of people nowadays who are hyper, they cannot, they just don't have the bandwidth to understand that. When you're like super, super fast and all the people that you follow are extremely hyper, how are you going to reach those states, deeper states of meditation? Can't.
Right. So my day job, working and learning, that they've done a lot of research around that. So to get people to learn to absorb material, everyone's brain has changed. Social media was designed to change our brain, to make us addicted to social media, to make us, just short term, click here, only have an attention span of 5-10 seconds. We're moving on. And, even with the meditation apps, like if I go to get on a meditation app, I see like it really, for me, doesn't help my practice. Maybe certain apps are good, but what happens is I just spend all this time sorting through trying to find a good meditation. And in the beginning, you could easily find, say, a good sleep meditation or a good yoga nidra, a walking, visualizing meditation. But now there's just infinite options, maybe many that aren't very good. But I just see, I go on the meditation app and I'm just trying for a long time to find something that's good, that I want to do in the moment. And I could just be meditating silently instead. Sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Someone's doing their own meditation. So yeah, in learning design, like they've looked a lot at, scans of the brain, but also just monitoring people, how long they can learn for, how long people can stay focused for. And it's tremendously less than 5 years ago and 10 years ago and before. So we're trying to create learning for them that they're going to be viewing on their cell phones or their laptops, and trying to make them remember this information. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. It goes back to how we're doing practices. So if we can't learn because we're so distracted, just be able to sit down and be able to focus our brain, we're also not going to be able to sit down and do a practice every morning or every evening because there's so many other things going on. So it's like having a coach, a guide, or at least like my written practice that I do 30 minutes of these items, and I do it the same time every day so that I don't skip over it with everything we have to distract us.
All right. The next topic we had was, what does it mean to practice correctly? And we had some ideas here. What does it mean to practice correctly from a psychological, emotional, or maybe even physical point of view? And how do you know that you exited a practice correctly? Who says or who sets the tone for a correct practice? And how do you actually know that you've done it in a correct way? And one example that I have here is from 2018. I attended a workshop facilitated by a Native American Indian from the Lakota people. He came to Romania and we were doing drums. So he brought deer skin and wood frames, and we built, like an entire group of people, we built our own drums. And after building them, it was a 2-day event. We also started to, towards the end, to use them and learn a few songs from the Lakota tradition. And this guy, who he was in his 60s back then and super, super intelligent and wise, he wanted to make a point for us. What does it mean to actually come to an event, a sacred event, whatever kind of practice, and how do we leave from there? So he had us go through 3 different exercises. We were banging the drum in different rhythms and singing according to that banging. So the first time he had us bang like super, super hard, and we were singing super, super loud, and the rhythm was faster. And after 2 minutes, when we stopped, he said, okay, now we're done. If everybody has to go home, how do you feel? And everybody was quiet. And there was this guy who said, wow, if I actually had to leave, I'd be driving, like I'd be pushing the acceleration pedal on my car, like all the way to the floor. Then he did it again, said, okay, we're gonna do again, much slower. And we were a bit better. So people were like, okay, yeah, I can feel a bit calmer. And then he had us do the next one. It was for 5 minutes, and he held a sustained rhythm, and we all had to join. And in those 5 minutes, obviously, everybody's mental state, emotional state changed. And he asked us, okay, now how do you feel? Everybody was like, okay, we get it. So we were grounded, we were like oriented in space. The guy with the acceleration pedal, he's like, yeah, I wouldn't go nuts on behind the steering wheel now.
Oh, yeah.
So it really, it dawned on me for the first time in 2018, what does it actually mean to take a decision? Because a lot of workshops that are done for events, they take people super hyped, and that's when they sell. And so many workshops do that. They sell when people are triggered and hyper enthusiastic and all of that. So hyper activation is the worst place from where you actually do anything. And it's important to actually realize how it feels for you when you're grounded. And I make a point in my practices to leave people on a calm, stable, embodied state. It's like nothing sensational, only grounded. Even with hot, amazing sex, because I'm an intimacy coach, I always tell people, yeah, but you gotta stay with that after everything, glow, excitement, until it grounds. Because otherwise you're walking around with all that activation and it's not wise, basically. So this was one way of looking at what does it mean to actually do a correct practice and bring the notion to people watching, okay, is this correct for me? Am I getting out of here grounded, stable, centered, in control of my own, well, senses, desires, wishes, thoughts, decisions, and all of that? I think that's the point of making a practice work for you.
Yeah, that was a great story to really see what you meant by grounding and leaving the practice in the right state.
The next one was intuitive practices, or making a practice work for you. And the ideas that we had were, what is an authentic practice? How do you make a practice feel natural for you? How do you trust yourself, or how do you have the knowledge of what is right for you? And if you're new to practices or to your spiritual path, then how do you take something that you see out there, but not turn it into something freaky or not functional, but actually make it work for you and truly have the notion of this is working for me now because. What is authentic practice from your perspective?
I think that has changed. You know, now I want to say authentic means authentic for me. However, you know, it just does have to be done a certain way. So authentic, yeah, I don't think I like that word, because
Mhm.
it's trying to say it's supposed to be a specific way. Like Coca-Cola is made this way, and it's always going to be made this way for the authentic recipe. So if we say we're supposed to do, I don't know, spinal rocking, it has to be done this certain way with your back and your neck and everything. And this is how it's been done 1,000 years. Well, we don't know that for sure. And our bodies have changed in the last few years with looking at our cell phones all the time. So maybe we should change the practice a little bit. I think the thing is, it's just like who's, if it was written about, why should we have to stay with the written material? Why can't we change it? It's like a religion in a way.
Mhm. Well, the only, I remember my Tai Chi teacher, she had done, by the time I joined, she had done Tai Chi for 16 years.
Yeah.
I add more years to that now. And one guy that joined the administrative team, he had read a lot of materials, including modern day approaches on Taoism and Taoist practices. And he tried to bring some proposals to this organization to change. And my Tai Chi
Okay.
teacher told him, yes, but this is how we were taught by our Chinese teacher. And it's not
Oh,
our change. We are sticking with the lineage that we've learned from. And the reason that they brought to this guy was that if you follow this method, it's been proven for thousands of years to work. Now, yeah, they had reached a level of development because they had stuck to the practice for the same teacher for 16 years. 16.
okay.
So that was a long time. And they are now in their 50s, I think. And well, they have a different take on things. They didn't grow up with the internet. They were not always hyper plugged to everything, news bombarding them from everywhere. So they had the entire being attuned to the more natural rhythms, because
Right, right.
natural rhythms are way slower than the artificial ones. We gotta.
Yeah, and they can feel and understand energy more. But something like Tai Chi, it's going to have, say, 20 steps. And it would take a lot of knowledge. So you would have to follow a lineage to know how to do the 20 steps in the correct order to get the specific results you're looking for. But if someone's doing, say, just spinal rocking, that's one thing. So there's only a few things with spinal rocking that you could do, say, incorrectly and get different energy results. But if it's Tai Chi and it's coming from a specific teacher, yeah, there'll be a few traditions that teach it slightly different. So that's why I guess you're picking a lineage and you're sticking to that lineage, and you're not taking any advice from other teachers coming in saying to do it another way because you want to do what your teacher taught you. And you have a certification like I got when I got my Qigong certificate. I was required to teach it a specific way.
Yeah. Basically, when I'm talking about practices, for me, practices are way deeper than just spinal rocking, for instance. And
Hmm.
even if you're doing, let's say, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but you're doing it with the philosophical or the philosophy behind it. And I'm from the generation that had Karate Kid, with Mr. Miyagi, who was teaching
Okay.
Karate Kid, and he was also teaching the philosophy behind it. So there's practice for me is much deeper than just skin level or bone level, or so it goes down to your
Hmm.
psyche, your spirit, and to your soulful growth. That's what I call a practice. So my Tai
Okay.
Chi, basically, she also did Qigong, she did Wushu, the Tai Chi. There are 75 forms in the Chen style. That's the style that I did, and they
Hmm.
had 3 levels. So you have beginner, middle, or intermediate, and advanced, and it's a totally different thing to do in the beginning, where you're doing purely physical. Intermediate, you start to soften the form and focus more
Okay.
on blending from one movement to another. And in the advanced, because she was partnered with a man, so they were man and woman facilitating or teaching, and they showed us for the third level, just as a demonstration. It did not look, I was in the beginner level. It did not look like anything I had seen, although I could recognize a bit of the
Yeah.
movements. So it was
Right.
pure energy movement. That was, so they were showing us, look, this is where you get to. Your body is the vehicle for you move, really understanding to move energy, flow with the chi, basically.
Okay.
And
So that goes to our point of being scattered. So can someone say be dedicated to Tai Chi and also yoga and various meditations and shamanic stuff, and goddess practices, full moon rituals? Can you do all of that in
no,
your life?
no. I mean,
You
you
have to
can't do
pick.
it. In Romanian, we call this sorkova. Sorkova means like a poor association of colors and shapes. And we had this thing that
Uh-huh.
we were kids for New Year's. We would make this sorkova with all colors. It was bright, it was tacky. And we would go to sing carols to people for the New Year's. And whenever you use the word sorkova, that was a really negative association because it did not look like anything. It was just this
Yeah.
flat thing that made no sense, basically. That was the point of it. It was for kids. And if you really want to be advanced and adult and really grow into your evolutionary path, if you really want to take this approach, then systems are not the same. Not even in Tai Chi, when you have different styles, let alone yoga from the Hindu tradition, Tai Chi from the Taoist tradition, they're not the same. And if you want to take shamanic practices also, then you're making I don't know what you're making, like a really bad soup of all the stuff.
Yeah.
So you're going to have an indigestion. It's like combining milk with meat, with fruit, and with ice cream. Good luck with that, digesting all of that.
Yeah. Or someone just has so much time that they could have two, so like, let's say someone doesn't have a job and in the morning they do Tai Chi, in the evenings they do yoga. They're spread apart. They could do both, but most of us are going to have a job and have lots to do.
Even the master in China that was teaching my
Hmm.
teachers, that was his job. And he did not have time to understand all of the
Yeah.
stuff Taoism has to offer and also do yoga or Hindu practices. So I
Yeah,
think
I guess I've moved away from, because I'm not even practicing Qigong anymore. So I might do one hand movement or something, but I'm not, just because I don't like the tradition anymore. I don't like having to be tied to having to do a set routine. And I don't know, there's not freedom in it. There's not freedom in movement in my daily life.
Mhm.
So I would rather do very simple practices. Wake up, do some breathing exercises, do some silent meditation, do movement that feels right for me, and not have to stick to tradition.
Okay. Actually, this brings us to the last topic that we had on our list, which was where are we at with the practices in our work, in our daily life, with everything that's been going on? How
Mhm.
do we, as from the coaching side, come to the coaching side? What does it look like for us, basically, as much as we're comfortable to share?
Yeah, that's what it looks like for me. And then doing some other practices. But I had a coach the first couple of months of the year until recently, and they were having me do some practices, but it didn't start out as a coach. It was supposed to be more accountability, but then they made themselves my coach.
Oh,
Yeah, like I like accountability so that I can just stay on path with, like, I was working with manifestation and law of attraction, but then they started like coaching me and giving me all these other various scattered practices, and I was just like, this doesn't fit in my day. Like they were wanting me to do the Hanapani, um, prayer meditation and full moon ceremonies, burning items, burning things I didn't want in my life. Let's see what else. All types of guided meditation, listening to music of a certain type all day long. And I was just like, hey, I don't have all day to be doing all these practices. I'm like, I have to have a job. I was like, this is actually making me lose money because I can't work as much. And I don't agree with some of these practices. So I guess that's why I brought up this conversation is, I had this person who made themselves my coach who had me doing a ridiculous amount of scattered practices, like, probably took all the stuff that she had learned from YouTube and workshops. She'd tried, like, she was teaching me masculine, feminine energy practices, and I'm like, hey, I've been a tantra teacher for 10 or 20 years. I know how to do basic. And she's like, no, do it this way. And I was like, this doesn't even blend in with the the other things. So I could see, like, if I didn't have a background already knowing that stuff, I would have ended up extremely scattered. Like another person who joined her accountability program would probably end up scattered all over the place, not having any kind of like the right routine, basically. Like you have to have some kind of routine and practice. You can't just do, say, meditation once a week or twice a week, and then you're doing, like screaming practices, breaking things practices. Like you were talking about with the gas pedal drumming, you have to know the right order to do it. You can't do like a feminine, gentle practice and be all in bliss. And then right after it, you do primal screaming and then you go about your daily thing. But some people do that. And some people might coach to do that. You have to like reground and, get back in yourself and like balance yourself. You can't just go from something really fast paced or very wild, and then that's your state. And your body's not, our body's not going to like that either. Yeah,
what I hear in this story is that, first of all, she changed the objective. You, as anybody, because coaches go for accountability, they also need that from somebody else. And from accountability practices, which is a totally different thing, to start doing feminine, masculine, whatever, burning, purging, that's not about accountability. That's something else. And if it wasn't negotiated beforehand, then yeah, you'd have to be pretty strong and centered to say, wait a second, this is not what we agreed. This is not what we spoke. And it's not helping.
I know. Not helping. Yeah. But I guess I would have felt rude anyway. I said that, like, hey, this isn't the contract I signed up for.
Which kind of rudeness do you want? Somebody changing the agreement without checking in, or you calling out what they're doing? Because no matter what, something is rude there.
So, yeah, I guess I did try to, attempt to mention it, but they got so confrontational and just like, they were like, this is, you're just fighting your growth. You're just, like that. And then in my head, I'm thinking like, no, you just don't know what you are doing. You are untrained, trying to teach me things that you are not qualified to be teaching. That's not blocking my own growth. That's doing stuff I consider wrong for me. So that's what I was thinking. I think it was just, I guess I should have been more determined in my coaching plan, but we had a contract and the contract just got very changed, adding on things that weren't supposed to be in the thing, But I know this month I don't have that coach anymore, of course, but I think many people would just keep on doing all these practices, or maybe you just like some of what I would do is be just like, sure, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll do that, and I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want them to, like, I felt like I could have been dropped after I'd already paid for the program if I didn't do it, what they were saying. And I didn't want to waste money and lose like half a month of the daily accountability stuff.
I think that's a very modern day challenge. How do you find a practitioner that is good for you? How do you make sure that they stick for what is your best interest and they also stick to the original agreement? They don't step out of their role. I think a good training for any practitioner will follow this. For instance, if my coach from the sexological bodywork certification were there, he'd say, wait a second, for who is this practice? What did we agree initially? And who am I as the practitioner to dictate what is good or not good for you? You are the one that needs to be accountable. And I'm only here to make sure that you check in with yourself and do what you feel that is helping you and what you can sustain. So
yeah.
That's the objective, basically, because if the coach sets it, then the work is for the coach, not for the coachee. I think sometimes a really strong, grounded, centered person that has this kind of a backbone is important in somebody's training, and not what is the word, gaslight your coachee if they put up a resistance to something that they didn't agree with you in the first place. So yeah, those are red flags.
And I could understand if it were something that came up and the person needed to work on, and like it came up in the accountability or the coaching, and you're like, oh, well, I know a practice that can help with that. But you can't just keep adding on things that are totally different for absolutely no reason.
Yep.
Just because they're bored and they heard about some new type of lesson and they want you to do it, or they're doing it themselves. Actually, that's something I've seen from a lot of amateur coaches, is anytime they learn something, they want to go teach that to all of their coachees or students. Like they do it for one time and then they want to go teach it. But yeah, it goes back to knowing how to pick the right coach. But I didn't think I was hiring a coach. It was for accountability. I didn't want a like a life coach or something.
Yeah, totally true. So where I'm at with the practices, first of all, I think everybody knows that last month, from the moment we're recording this, Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, and all the neighboring countries were literally stressed out and worried that the invasion might reach them, or that it might break out into an actual war. And for 2 weeks, at least, everybody was triggered with good reason. Like everybody was triggered. And what I did back then was, because it was hard for me to focus when you're triggered, when you're worried for your own life, survival, and not because you have what to eat or because your country's, no, it's because some crazy man somewhere else is doing something that, he has the military power and the financial whatever power to do it, and he's doing it, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're triggered. So everybody was, for 2 weeks, I saw this on my personal Facebook. It's in Romanian. I have mostly Romanians. They were all like therapists, psychologists, coaches, just any kind of person. They were in fight or flight mode.
Okay.
And it was hard for people to focus. It was hard for people to not watch the news and not see if it's going to turn into a nuclear attack and so on. So I had to work even harder back then just to stay grounded. And I announced a practice group 2 times a day, so morning and evening. And it was like, that was a really big challenge for me, just to get back to being able to contain the space for others. I actually had to do extra work just for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to contain other people's triggers. I had to first work on mine. And that was not easy at all. And after 2 weeks, and that was exhausting, I gotta say. It was exhausting to counteract what was going on. And I had a lot of Romanians supporting me, and then at least one person commenting on one of my Romanian posts. You know, you could just go with the flow and be triggered and say fuck it and whatever and start to throw out hate. And I was like, I showed him, figuratively speaking, the finger. I was like, get out of here with that attitude. That's not what I'm gonna do, okay? That's not why I signed up to be a coach. So just go away somewhere else with that mentality.
Okay.
And then I decided to continue, because the situation is not solved, but I'm definitely more grounded. So now I have a Patreon account where mostly Romanians joined, but I do once a day a practice. And the intention here is simply to ground, like no evolutionary growth for now, because we're still in a potentially a war zone. So I'm just, okay, main objective right now, grounding and centering your emotions. And I work with requests from people or with people that join live, and I work with the intentions that they bring in the morning, or that's when I do practices. So it's still adapted to what people need, because I'm here to help others. I'm not here to, only when they're like, okay, I'm good, I have no idea. That's when I'm, okay, do you feel like trying? And I bring an idea. And if they say yes, okay, we do that. But I don't just, okay, we're going to do this now because I tell you that this one's going to ground you now. Really? No. So that's where I'm at. So my main objective nowadays is grounding and centering and bringing stability. And I do body work, basically, which was the essence of my training. So body work. Not necessarily, I don't teach Tai Chi. That was for me. I don't practice now with the jade egg. None of the ladies are, that's too advanced for what we need right now. So I'm adapting to none, yeah. But that's where I'm at.
So what you're saying is you're just helping people stay with a daily practice by leading a daily practice every day.
Mm-hmm. And the objective is to ground and center emotions. That's the objective that I announced from the get-go. Yeah. And that's what I'm up for.
Yeah, so that wouldn't, you could also look at it from just the problems people can have in daily life, not being next to a war zone. And it could, get worse and worse. So it's having that set routine, either with a coach, an online group, or being structured ourselves, so that we always make time for that. Because war could break out at any time, or people have other issues, like there's millions of unemployed people in the United States. Maybe people are taking care of someone with a health problem in their home. We have a lot of things that could come up that take almost all our mental thought and our energy, because we're having to think or take care of another situation. So it's, if we just keep putting it off, like, okay, I'll do my practice later, I'll do it a little bit later. Oh, shoot, I'm going to have to do it tomorrow because I forgot about it. Either we need someone to hold us accountable or we have to be very determined. And that's actually, from what I understand, that's why yoga was developed. It was to prepare themselves, to be warriors, to have their body prepared for invasions and wars. But also, it was a set routine. Every morning, first thing, no matter what, do your yoga practice. And that sets you up for the day. Anything that's coming, no matter what's going on, you do your practice so you prepare your body and your prana. So a lot of that was centered around, possible daily village invasions.
Yep.
Because they could be invaded at any time, but they can't just sit around and be worried about it and be constantly preparing. You also have to prepare your mind, your prana, your physical body to be ready for all of that.
Yep. Tai Chi, for instance, it's derived from martial arts, basically, but it's a more subtle form of just moving the body and keeping it strong. So, and the goal of it is like Wushu, Tai Chi, Qigong, which is the next step, more refined. And from there, Taoist meditation. So it's a progression towards evolutionary growth, let's say spiritual growth. So a progression, basically, like all of these cultures and traditions, that was their goal, to take you closer to your internal maturity and spiritual also.
Yeah, but we're also the other thing is, like, how are we working with the modern things, like specifically like women's practices? So maybe we don't want to do jade egg right now. Maybe that doesn't fit in, but we know we have to do some kind of women practice, women movement or embodiment, feminine energy. And that's not we're not doing a specific lineage or set, set corporate trademark routine. It's not trademarked. So what does that look like?
First of all, in my group, we are all women. And what I help women do is tune into their body, see what it feels and what it wants, actually. And on several occasions, they do request pelvic floor practice because they want to feel juicy. Yep.
Yeah.
And if, let's say, I had a woman that in the support group, she showed up almost daily. And then when it ended, she reverted back to once per week. And she can feel herself, like she can feel not herself, basically. That's what she said. I've been not doing practices daily because she doesn't do them on her own. I don't recognize myself. I can't even tune into pleasure because I'm always so outside of me. So actual progression now, at least for the women that I'm guiding, is to get back into the body, relax, and feel a little bit of pleasure. And when you have that, you also naturally ask for more. Obviously, there's also the foods that you eat, but I don't go into that discussion with them. I sometimes let them know, hey, I'm doing shakes. I have these herbs that I take. I try to eat natural, cook at home. That's why it takes me much longer to feed myself and all of that. But I think that's up to everybody. That's also important. The only thing that I signed up to help them with is embodiment practices. So that's what it looks like for women right now. Obviously, if you are in a couple, when you're grounded, relaxed, a bit in pleasure, you can then show up differently in intimacy and polarity, intimate polarity with your partner. That also works perfectly. So, and that's not up to me. Like, that's up to everybody who has a partner. Those who don't have it, then yeah, pleasure practices, like igniting pleasure in a bit of arousal, not too much, we can still contain a bit of arousal in the practice. And that's what we do. Sometimes we also use affirmations, beautiful affirmations for ourselves. And on occasions, I invite them to see how they are inspired to use the states that we have in the practice in their everyday life. I don't think this kind of approach would happen if we had men in the group. I think a masculine presence there would have turned around everything.
Yeah, I'm just listening about your how to have a set routine. Yeah. What's our next topic?
That was it. We invite everybody now to let us know, first of all, where they're at with their practices, and check out some of the practices that we're facilitating. We're going to link a few stuff, both of us, under this video, and encourage everyone to take a coach or a guide, or however they call it, and stick with that person, and make sure that they stick also with the original agreement, whatever they agree in the beginning, and stick with that person for the long run, like years and years, how you said with your yoga school.
Yeah. So I hope people got from this, from our stories, why not to be scattered, why not to do like every kind of practice and be more structured, because it definitely helps in times that things, possible war, that sort of thing, like something that comes up where you have less ability to stay structured. So now when you have the ability to have structure, is the time now to develop it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all the practices are like so fantastic that we don't want to put them off anyway. Like I find a good practice, I want to keep it up because I feel amazing, and I don't want to take away from that and do it less, because then I don't feel, as good.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree.
Yes, so thanks for having me today and chatting about this.
It was a pleasure. And we're going to watch the comments. If any questions arise, we're always happy to pick this up again and clear up or bring more insights. So we invite you to check out all the proposals that we have for you and really stick with whatever you choose for the long run.